With today's debut of the very first trailer for Transformers 5, a new era for the franchise has officially begun, which I'm going to break down for you right now. And this new era features writers. Remember that vicious, fantastic joke from 30 Rock a few years ago where Liz Lemon found herself in the future and stumbled across a poster for an upcoming Transformers movie where they finally admitted, written by no one. Well, I guess Paramount took that joke to heart, or perhaps their dwindling domestic returns at the box office, and have decided, as Michael Bay leaves the franchise, supposedly, he said he was leaving before, but as Bay directs his last film with Transformers 5, a new brain trust of writers makes their way in. Ships in the night, passing on the Paramount lot. As Transformers 5, aka The Last Night, is conceived and written by three members of this new writers team. Yes, Hasbro and Paramount have brought together a very large team of writers, actually, which we're going to go through, to sit in a special room that they actually constructed for them. Like, they actually have to go to work, I'm not sure 5 days a week, I would imagine maybe 2 or 3. But I wonder how many of them are in a room at a time, because this room has a lot of toys in it, and like DVDs and Blu-rays, to inspire them, and it would be weird to just have like maybe 1 or 2 adults in there, right? But they're supposed to sit in this room and come up with new and different adventures for the Autobots and Decepticons, and also how all those adventures are intertwined, because it's official! Everybody wants to be Marvel, or more accurately, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There's Star Wars, also owned by Disney, Transformers, Universal's Monsters universe that they're building with the Mummy trailer just debuting. They tried with Dracula Untold over there, didn't work. I hope there aren't too many false starts over here with Transformers. And then, of course, the DCEU has infamously been copying Marvel's playbook with mixed results. Everybody's getting mixed results, but Marvel. But someone's going to crack it. Now, interestingly, both Star Wars and now Transformers are the only ones to have teams of writers. But even there, they differ. So Transformers can claim that they're putting a little bit of a unique spin on this, right? So Star Wars does have a team of writers that are, the story team, they call them basically, but we don't really see them. They only are trotted out occasionally when Kathleen Kennedy needs to prove that she hires women. But the Star Wars story team doesn't write the actual scripts for the movies themselves. But with the Transformers team of writers, they not only conceive the films, but they get to write them in addition. So that makes it a little bit of a sweeter gig. And they're getting their names out there because actually, they're well-known writers to begin with, though. So I don't know if they could subjugate them the way the Star Wars team is subjugated. Interesting. I guess that's a good thing to keep in mind when hiring people, right? Are they too big to stuff in the back room and keep them there? But anyway, I think that the other interesting thing about the Transformers writers' room, their brain trust, is that this is very similar to what they do with television shows. Because there are so many episodes, you can't have one writer in that instance. So they do have a team of writers that sit in a room and they bounce ideas off of each other and make sure they're coordinating. And when you think about it, considering how popular television is these days, TV meets Marvel is a very good business plan. I'd feel good about that, but then I'd feel less good once I saw who was sitting in that toy room. Because Robert Kirkman spent one day there, and then he left. Now, he said, hey, look, I had to have throat surgery. That's why I left. Nothing personal. But here's the thing. He could have gone back to the room, right? I mean, we're better to recuperate than a room full of toys and animation. But instead, he's gone on to other endeavors. So throat surgery is just his he actually had it, but it's just his very polite, way of saying, no, thank you. So Transformers 5 is written by 3 members of the writers team, the Brain Trust, all right? So you've got a couple of these. It's interesting. It's a whole bunch of TV writers and movie writers and a lot of writing teams. So Art Markham and Matt Holloway have been writing together for quite some time. They wrote the first Iron Man, and they also wrote Punisher Warzone. So they've been writing for quite some time, but not consistently. Also, Ken Nolan is working on The Last Night, and he wrote Black Hawk Down, but then he hasn't really written any screenplays since then, which I think is kind of weird, but he did write TNT's The Company. I don't know if I'd want anything with TNT on it attached to my mega franchise, but, we'll see. So now let's look at the rest of the team, right? Let's look at this Avengers team for Paramount's Transformers. So Akiva Goldsman is the one running the whole thing. He's the Captain America, or the Optimus Prime of the group. Now, he's an Oscar winner for Beautiful Mind, and that Oscar has really kept his career going. He also co-created Fringe, though, which certainly was very successful, at least on a cult-level basis. And Jeff Pinkner, his co-creator and the showrunner of Fringe, is also on this team. So Akiva got one of his own guys in there. Now, Akiva Goldsman, after A Beautiful Mind, went on to write I Am Legend, Da Vinci Code, and Angels and Demons, and also Winter's Tale. But he keeps getting work, inexplicably. As I've told you before, that must mean he's good in a room, which means that even though your resume is crap, and, God forbid anyone actually pop your movies into the DVD player or stream them, when you actually talk to them in the room, you sound pretty convincing. Or your agent and manager do. I guess he just maybe plops his Oscar down on the desk and says, But anyway, Akiva Goldsman's also writing the upcoming Dark Tower movie, but that's rumored to be a little bit iffy as well. Then also from television, Stephen DeKnight. The lines are blurring because Stephen DeKnight not only is behind Spartacus and Daredevil, although Daredevil season 2, he did Daredevil season 1, which was quite good, and then he left, and that's why people had problems with Daredevil season 2. But speaking of sequels, he is also the screenwriter on Pacific Rim Maelstrom. Then you have Zach Penn, who wrote, get this, Inspector Gadget. I guess Inspector Gadget transformed, right? Behind Enemy Lines, that was a pretty solid movie. But he also worked on X-Men The Last Stand and The Incredible Hulk. But he is the creator of Alphas, the TV show, and Spielberg has him, liked the script that he wrote enough to attach himself to Ready Player One. Then you've got Andrew Barrer and Gabriel Ferrari. Barrer wrote 2014's Haunt, which Gabriel Ferrari produced, and now they're a writing team. I never heard of Haunt. Haunt didn't really make any big waves, but apparently it impressed some studio execs. So they're not only working on this writers team, but they're co-writing Sabrina the Teenage Witch, which apparently they're remaking, and also they got the Ant-Man and Wasp gig, so that's pretty good. Then speaking of women, there are 3 women on this writers team, right? There's Lindsay Beer, who is doing the Short Circuit remake, a lot of remakes here, Dungeons and Dragons, and the Barbie movie. Then there's also Geneva Robertson-Dorette, who's also working on that Dungeons and Dragons film. Lindsay Beer and Geneva Robertson-Dorette are new writers. They don't have any produced credits to their name so far, feature films, but they seem to be, that team of, a lot of times when Hollywood panics and doesn't know what to do with a movie, they just throw screenwriters at it. You take a crack at it. Now you take a crack at it. Oh, I think that made it worse. Why don't you try and fix it? And sometimes they pay big dollars, like Tony Gilroy on Rogue One, making $200K a week, got himself up to $5 million for his payday. Or they go cheap with newbies like Lindsay Beer and Geneva Robertson-Dorette. But Geneva Robertson-Dorette also got the Tomb Raider gig, the upcoming one, with Alicia Vikander, so at least she's got that going for her. And then speaking of buzz, Christina Hodgson's Bumblebee script has a lot of buzz. She is the one who wrote that Solo for the writers team. That's one of the upcoming Transformers movies for 2018. And even though her Blacklist film Shut-In has 0% on Rotten Tomatoes and made no money, this Bumblebee script has made her hot stuff in Hollywood. So hot that Warner Brothers hired her to write the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, that's what they're calling it now, Solo movie. So interestingly, Bumblebee will be the 2018 movie, and it seems like they're, speaking of Star Wars, Transformers is going to maybe borrow from them their release schedule, where you have maybe some spin-off movies, and then you go back to the main films. That's how Star Wars has set it up. And on that note, Transformers 6 is set for 2019, and they're looking for a new director because Bay has said, we'll see, that he will not return. Now, the other movies that they're working on that they've dreamed up so far in that toy room is Transformers 1. This is a good one. It's going to be the origin of Cybertron, where they talk about how the Autobots and Decepticons came about and why they're fighting, why they don't like each other, why there's a beef there. This is going to be written by Ant-Man and Wasp's Bear and Ferrari. I'm going to do them a solid and list that as their credit, even though it hasn't come out yet. But what's really exciting to me about this is that it's going to potentially be an animated movie. That's very cool. Then John Chu really wants to do a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover, and nobody at Paramount has told him to stop talking about it whenever he does interviews. And even after Gem came out, which is amazing, but Gem was for Universal, so maybe Paramount just chuckles to themselves over that and says, good one. You're not going to do that to us, right? And then I'd be like, have you seen the rest of John Chu's movies? I'd be afraid. And that's kind of like a theme going on here. I think that the real Achilles heel of not just the Transformers franchise, but sometimes Hollywood itself, is talent, an eye for talent. Because I like the ideas here. I like the animated film in particular, because I think that one of the biggest problems with the Transformers franchise is that the Transformers themselves are so poorly developed. I think that for some reason, they feel that everybody's a huge Transformers fan coming in, and so they don't need to develop Optimus Prime, right? I'm like, I know nothing about Optimus Prime. I've seen him in 4 movies, and I'm like, buddy, I feel like we just met. You have a cool voice, though, and I actually did get to meet Peter Cullen, and I did an interview. I have an interview with him that I hope you'll check out. I'll put a link down below in the video description. Also, the idea of maybe doing an animated movie that appeals to an adult audience, or, because it has to. Transformers 1 can't be a kid's film. So anything that advances adult animation in the West, I'm pretty excited about. I also like the idea of a writer's room. It's working very well for TV. I like the idea of everyone being coordinated, and I like the idea that the writers get to implement their own ideas or execute their own ideas. That's fantastic. And I like bringing in fresh blood and new energy to a franchise. I think that's working very well over at Fox with their Marvel titles. But what's with this roster? I mean, it's just really bad. I think anyone could look at it and be like, I don't have a lot of faith in that, right? Like if this were, something you had to, trust, well, in this case, your livelihood to, I think you'd be like, no thanks, I'll just do it myself. And so I think this is a real problem for Hollywood. They refuse to look for the best talent. They have some writers programs, but I still feel that agents and managers really muddle the situation by talking studios into bad ideas and talking up people who shouldn't be talked up. Even with the writers programs where they search for new talent, I think that agents and managers still find a way to get their people in there. Because Michael Bay, I actually don't have a problem with Michael Bay. Bad Boys, excellent. The Rock, before it became an awesome individual, great movie. The Island, even Pain and Gain and 13 Hours had their moments. So I think that writers really have been the problem for the Transformers franchise and for Hollywood overall. And so even Marvel is starting to take some risks these days. But I mean, some of these people are on Marvel's payroll. So I think that franchise filmmaking, I think that's the next hurdle it has to clear. Quality. Look at movies like Mad Max Fury Road and the upcoming Kong Skull Island, but they don't make as much money as these formula films. So it's going to be a tough hurdle to clear. What do you think? How does the upcoming Transformers cinematic universe sound to you? What films sound the best? Do you like anybody on here in terms of the talent? And what do you think of Hollywood's hiring practices? Write your thoughts down below, and you can check out some more videos right now.